because my first webinar, my chat box was open, everything was out. It was crazy. Okay, so I'm going to present this. And where did we start? Okay, here's the beginning of my presentation. Welcome. Okay, so pre-construction guide for you guys. Here, this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about what it is, how it works, the pros and cons of pre-construction, the deposit structures, the typical one. They're always very different, but in a nutshell, they're pretty similar. The cooling off period, which is something that's interesting about pre-construction. There's 2 closing dates with pre-construction that we're going to talk about. There's going to be occupancy fees and just costs in general, right? Closing costs and occupancy fees, common myths about pre-construction, and some of the builders that we like at the team, some of the most reputable builders in the city. And then of course, we're going to end it as always on Q&A or Ryan and I ranting for a while, just talking to each other as we always do. So here you go. What it is. Oh, Ara's here. Ara. Perfect. Both my dads are here. This is good. So when you're buying a pre-construction project, you guys, you're not actually buying a property. What you are buying into is the right to purchase. So you don't actually legally own this entity until the building is not just built, but registered. Okay, so we're going to talk about the life cycle a little bit of that. Another thing that's interesting to know here with pre-construction is that the developer has the right to change things, right? They will give you the best foot forward type of a scenario when they're selling the project, but there's certain things that may change throughout the course of the construction, and sometimes they can alter the floor plan a little bit of what you have. They may add a column. That's something that's kind of common. They'll add a column into your floor plan. Some of the less known or smaller developers, they may remove certain amenities because it's just not feasible for them to fit that into with their pricing and whatnot. Bigger developers don't do that, but just something for you guys to know. The life cycle is as follows. I'll just quickly run through it so you guys are familiar. When a developer decides to build, let's say, a condo, in order for them to get money from the lender or the bank or whoever is financing this for them, in order to start the construction, because we're talking in like millions and millions of dollars for them to build, they need to finance it. What they need to do is they need to be 70%, as a rule of thumb, 70 or 75% sold out before they even put a shovel in the ground. This is super important because it's not like that in places like some places in the States, for example. I know in New York, they can build a condo building and it'll be standing vacant without anybody moving in for a period of time sometimes because they didn't pre-sell it. In Canada, you cannot do that. I don't know what the other provinces are like, but in Toronto and Ontario, you have to be sold 75% in order to actually get financing. So that is why they're pretty aggressive with the marketing and whatnot. So once they get their financing, they also get their permits, right? There could be permits to build and do all these things before or after they start selling, but then they put the shovel in the ground, they start building. Once they're built, with these construction or pre-construction condos, they typically build from the ground up. Okay, so we're talking about 2 closing dates. People can move in, like if your unit is finished and you're on a lower floor, you don't have to move in, but you'll start having to pay to the developer. Okay, and we'll talk about those costs. And then there's a period of time that's called occupancy. And that could last anywhere between a few months, like 2-3 months, to like 2 years. Okay. And so the developer continues to build up into all the units. And then once they've built all the units, they now start building the common elements and they finish all the amenities and things like that. Once all of that is built, the developer creates a corporation for that condo. So if you guys know anything about how condos are structured, a condo is just a legal structure basically of a building. And what it means is that there's a corporation that manages the building, and you will have maintenance fees that you pay to that corporation to take care of certain things that you collectively need to take care of as a building, right? So like if the lights go out in the common areas, or to clean the garage, or to do any landscaping and things like that outside. So once the developer puts a corporation together, hires a property manager and things like that, now they can register. Once they're registered, this is the day that you become an actual legal owner of the condo unit or the property. And this is when your mortgage kicks in. Okay, and this could be years down the line. Okay, so like I said, the developer needs 70 to 75% to get the financing. In some cases, they do need to sell it completely before they get cover financing. Permits can be done before or after sale. So permits are things that basically the municipality that you're building in will allow you to build a certain type of a structure in a certain type of a location. So typically, if they don't have the permits yet from the city, buying that property is going to be a little bit riskier. So always you want to know these things, right? You want to ask whether or not the permits have been built. So we just were selling out a building in the distillery. They already had the permits. Everything was ready in place. They were selling already. They know for sure that they can build there. All they have to do is sell out to get their financing, and then they put the shovel in the ground. And so basically they're starting to build already pretty much this year. And they're able to get started without delays. Now, when the developer sells it, okay, here's the interesting part that's really important to you guys as the consumers, right? When the developer sells it, they will typically release it in phases. Okay, the first and foremost phase, that's like their friends and family phase that they only give super internally, that nobody else has access to. And then there's also, of course, institutional investing that buys out entire floors. But the first real release that they have to the public, it's called VIP Platinum Release. That release is given to agents who do a lot of business in the city, in the area. And it's a very exclusive circle of brokers who have access to this. They will, amongst themselves, share and split this inventory. I don't know if this should be disclosed or not, but they have a circle that they talk amongst themselves, and they're able to basically make sure that this allocation that the developer gives, the first allocation, is absorbed. And the reason they want to do that is because this first allocation is the most profitable, the best allocation for the consumer. So they will typically have the best incentives, the best discounts. So like, again, just to give you an example, when we were selling this pre-construction project here in the distillery, the first release was 10 to 20K cheaper per floor plan. It had assignment, like you were allowed to assign or sell this project before you basically move into it. You can sell it to somebody, which a lot of developers will just completely refuse you to do it, or they'll say you have to pay me like $5,000. Here, there was no fee for it, and that was the incentive. You would be allowed to rent it out during occupancy, right? Again, remember, you don't own this property until it registers. So technically, even in occupancy, you're kind of renting. So they can allow you or disallow you to rent it out to other people with their consent. So in this case, they were, and there was a bunch of other perks, like with parking and things like that. So you just get a lot more perks with this first release, and you kind of get a built-in, profit already starting when you're in that first release. So again, another example, I bought a pre-construction with my sister for ourselves. We got it in the first release. And already right now, a few months later, the developer is selling the exact same layout. The developer is selling it for 55K more. But all we did was buy it in the first release. Okay, so always, if you want to get into pre-construction, it's going to be the best for you to get into the first release. The second release is going to be open to all brokers, and typically the third wave of releases is open to the public. Okay, so they're releasing inventory in pieces. That first release is very limited too, by the way. Like the developer, it's not in their best interest to release everything at once at these discounts, because typically the second and the third release, people jump on it and it's sold out relatively quickly. So now another thing to know here with pre-construction, it moves so fast. So always the first things to go are the best layouts and the cheapest units. those are kind of the two little pools of inventory that are gone. We're not talking days, they're gone in hours. And then everything else goes a little bit slower, with the biggest, most like the most expensive units going typically slower than the rest, just because there's a smaller pool of buyers for that. But those cheapest investment units and the units with the most, I don't even know how to say, like really well placed or planned layouts, because you, as you know, if you guys have seen any pre-construction, there's a lot of layouts that are like a little iffy. So getting a layout that really works and it's really clear, people jump on it and they buy it. And also higher floors tend to sell out first. Okay. So if you're looking into pre-construction, you want to be ready and available and jumping on it the day that it launches, because we've experienced it and we've experienced it time and time again. Stuff that your clients will want, everybody else wants, and then it's gone. It's so fast. So there are certain things that you can do in order to get in there, but we can talk about that more. Okay, so here you go. So we talked about incentives, discounted pricing, free or discounted right to assign, the right to assign in general, right to lease, and capped levies. So yes, capped levies is another really, really good one. Oh, Dasha is here. Dash, привет. Ara says, sometimes great opportunity long after launch when developer needs units sold after construction has started, higher prices than launch, but good incentives and solar terms. Yeah, actually, that is also true. And Ara, does this happen after they've already sold out 70% typically, or does this happen if in case they didn't sell out as much as they wanted to sell out? While you're answering, we will wait here. Ara is our pre-construction guru, and sorry.
I'm currently on a train, so my reception is not great in the middle of rural Quebec at the moment, but or not Quebec, sorry. Anyway, but so no, it's already sold past 70%, but they just need to kind of move some units. It'll be more expensive than launch prices, but they'll have great deposit structures, and we can have more negotiating power for incentives at that time.
That's beautiful. And actually, while Ara is saying this, this is a great point to bring home also. There is negotiating power. Like, again, it all really comes down, I think, with pre-construction, a lot of the times with your connections, if you're trying to get into the first release, and later it's kind of knowing what to ask for. But there are, yes, you can negotiate the length of your deposits or the structure of that, and potentially get some discounts, which is great.
And because they've launched so long ago, they're more in line with the prices of current resale because it's closer to occupancy usually.
Yeah, there you go. It's awesome. Here we are. All right, let's move on. I want to tell you guys about about what levies are, but I think I have a slide on that. Okay, so let's talk about the pros and cons of pre-construction. We'll start with the positives of it, and then we'll move on into the negatives here. So with pre-construction, you don't need to get a mortgage until the project manager registers, which is typically like 3 to 5 and sometimes even longer years down the road. If you can't qualify right now, or you don't want to deal with the headaches of dealing with that right now, this is a good option. The payments are incremental, which allows people, typically people who are buying this as an investment or as a second, third, fourth property, to get in with less cash at a time. And we'll talk about the deposit structure and how that goes in the couple of next slides. It's great if you want to invest in real estate without having to deal with tenants. So like you're kind of postponing that down the road, and you may not even have to deal with that if you end up being able to sell it before it registers. Same thing here. If your financial situation isn't amazing today, you can buy yourself time while already having your foot in the door sooner. This is such a huge pro of pre-construction. A lot of the people want to lock something in now, but they cannot, but they understand the fact that the prices are continuing to go out, they're getting more and more expensive. So it just becomes more and more out of reach. So it may be a great option for somebody like that. Little maintenance in the beginning, since all appliances are brand new and everything's on warranty, and you have flexibility with the finishes. And of course, like my mom likes to say, it's there's no goodies on it. So nobody has touched it before, so it's brand new. And of course, latest construction technology is going to be in pre-construction properties. Now, here are the cons of it. Okay. And this is something that I think some people don't understand here, and we want to really make sure we drive this home. You don't start paying down your loan until the building registers. So you're missing out on that equity that you would be paying down if you were to get into an existing property. So if you're able to get into an existing property, you'll have more equity, very likely, in it in a 5-year span than you would if you were buying a pre-construction. There's more risk if the developer hasn't received permits to build while pre-selling, which we talked about earlier. Because of the price premiums built into pre-construction, you need to wait for the market to catch up to the price you paid in order to start growing in value. So I want to stop here for a second and talk a little bit about this. Common myth is that pre-construction is cheaper than resale being already existing properties. And this cannot be further from the truth. Right now, lately, the developers have been adding a minimum of 15 to 30% premium to the pricing of pre-construction. Just to give you like an idea of what that looks like. That is, let's say downtown right now, our pricing's anywhere between $1,000 per square foot to like all the way to $1,300 per square foot on average. Pre-construction downtown will be anywhere from like $1,400 to $1,800 per square foot right now. So you're paying quite a bit more for the same or smaller space. Okay, so once again, I'll repeat this one again. You are buying at a premium. So if your property is going to be built in 5 years, you're probably buying at the price that's somewhere here. All right, so the market needs to catch up to you. Let's just say arbitrarily it's going to be 2 years, and then you have another 2 years of building value. Maybe if the market is slower and you catch it at a time where we're not accelerating as fast in values, it might be that by the time it's built, you only catch up with the value. So that's something to really, really keep in mind. Pre-construction has an element of risk that you wouldn't have in existing homes. There's a chance the developer cancels the project. Let me see what we have here. 2,000 per square foot at One Del Isle at Yonge and St. Clair. Damn, there you go. We are officially at $2,000 a square foot, you guys. So that is cool and interesting. But another thing to also keep in mind here, you guys, when you see pre-construction pricing, this is such a phenomenal way to gauge where the market is going. You know that these people who are buying these pre-construction projects, a lot of them are investors. And when the property is built, you better be sure that they are going to be selling and they're going to be trying to get a profit for it. So these prices are going to be what we're looking at, and all the properties that are around the area that this building is going to be in. That's the building that's going to be pulling them up. Condo investments are low risk, no brainers. There you go. Ara is huge in investing in pre-construction condos. I think he's got a few there. And he calls them building wealth in a slow cooker. And I love that. And okay, so let's get back. You're giving me too much jollies over here. We're supposed to be talking about cons right now. So the last two cons: you are buying sight unseen or based off of floor plans and a model suite that is usually full of upgrades, some which we can't get if you want it. And then, of course, there's no history of management. So you can't really see how their maintenance fees have been acting and things like that you can do with the property that has been in existence for a few years. Okay. Just something to beware here. All right. Another one, not to scare you guys off, but just wanted to include this. Delays are inevitable. Most pre-construction projects will be delayed. Developers will set their closing dates early instead of later because it's easier for them to push it back rather than pull it forward. Okay. And then there's, if there are any delays outside of their control, they can push the closing date back without consequence beyond their original 2 breaks. But they are given 2 chances to push the date back for their own delays. And delays that are outside of their control could be things like strikes and etc. And then there's material changes, marketing and reality. The amenities, the site plan, even the unit layout are all subject to change. Okay. So it doesn't happen often and they're usually very minor when they are, but they can be not so minor. Like I said, they could probably sometimes they can put like a post, what do you call them? A supporting beam in the unit. If you've been to condos, you'll see them sometimes. And people ask me like, why is it in this awkward spot? And I'm like, maybe so that the building doesn't fall over. I don't know. Here we are. So what else we got? Yeah, cons are mostly the stuff that you can't control. That's right. Okay, next. Okay, so we come to the deposit structure. Here, the typical deposit structure is that you have a $5,000 certified check when you're signing. So if you're somebody that's going to like a launch of real estate project, you want to have this certified check with you, that's made out to the lawyer of the developer, because there's no other way for you to secure this unit. If you're doing it through realtors, it can be done a little bit differently, but still you need to get it done. So you're basically paying typically $5,000 with the offer on signing, the balance to the first 5% within 30 days. The next 5% is typically 3 months later. The next 5% is another 180 days. So that's 6 months later, and another 5% at occupancy. And occupancy can be a couple of years down the road. Now, there are developers right now and through COVID that have been extending the deposit structures, which have made it significantly more accessible to get into pre-construction, which is why pre-construction is still soaring and doing great for itself, even at these prices. Okay, so just an example of some of the deposit structures that we have been seeing right now is 5,000 with the offer, the remainder to 5% in 30 days, the next deposit 4 months later, the one after that 1 year later, and the last one at occupancy, which would be a year and a half later or so after that, could be even 2 years later, something like that. So again, that makes it much, much easier for you to put together these deposits, right? If you're looking at like $50,000 deposits, you have an entire year to collect it. Well, it's a lot more attainable than doing that in 6 months. I have seen some deposit structures where it's like 1% a month over a certain period of time until you reach a certain point. I have seen deposit structures that are 2.5% every like quarter. So every 3 months. So it will vary slightly, but the idea, like this is the most typical that I'm showing you right here. Okay. Does everybody knows this? Everybody's familiar with this, I hope. Or if not, I hope this is showing you something new. Okay. Cooling off period. This is your next step in the transaction. So you have come to this office to sign the agreement to get this unit. Legally, you have 10 days to back out. Okay, this is something that is set by law because, again, the pre-construction market is so crazy and so busy and so fast. You need to be able to take this agreement now and take it to your lawyer for review. Okay, so cooling off means you're allowed to back out without any consequence. Okay, so in some provinces, the cooling off day period is different. It could be 7 days. In Ontario, it's 10 days, and it's not calendar day, guys. It's not business days. It's calendar days. So if you catch it on a week where you catch the 2 weekends, and your lawyer only works Monday to Friday, which all of them only work Monday to Friday, well, you have to be pretty assertive to get that checked out in the meantime. Next. Okay, everybody's okay with the cooling off period. I just kind of went through that really quickly, but that's the time where you really do your due diligence. Here is now your 2 closing days that we kind of brushed upon a little bit, but here's your occupancy and here's your final closing, okay? In the occupancy phase, this is when your specific unit is built. If you're buying on a lower floor, your unit's going to be built sooner than some of the other units on the higher floors. If you're on the higher floor, you're going to have less of the occupancy time. Now, during the occupancy, you still don't own the unit. It can be pushed back. So again, I have a client right now whose occupancy date has been pushed back twice already. And right now they're saying that it's firm for November. So we'll see how that goes. And on occupancy, they'll request from you to get post-dated checks. So something kind of very similar to rentals. They'll ask for 12 post-dated checks, and then whatever they don't use, they give back to you or cut and burn. So you start paying occupancy fees, or it's also called ghost rent. And it's a minimum of a few months, and it goes all the way up to 2 years. Okay, we're going to talk about occupancy fees in the next slide. And then final closing is obviously when you own it, your mortgage kicks in. And another thing is it's in developers' best interest to get through to the final closing ASAP because they don't get paid until they finish the project. Okay, so just keep that in mind because we hear some people saying, oh, the developer is this, the developer is that. The developers want to finish the project just as much and just as quickly as you do as well. Occupancy fees. Okay, so the occupancy fee structure is determined by the builder and will be in your purchase of agreement when you first sign your deal. It can include any of the following, but cannot be greater than them. So number one is interest calculated on a monthly basis on the unpaid balance of the purchase price at a prescribed rate. So you're not paying the mortgage, but you're paying the interest of the mortgage. An amount estimated for municipal taxes attributable to the unit. And then the projected monthly common expenses, so your maintenance fees. So you're paying maintenance fees, interest, and taxes, basically. And that creates your ghost rent. Now, this rent, you guys, typically is less than your actual rent would be. So people are still kind of happy to do it. If you're renting, you can at market rents, typically this occupancy fee is going to be cheaper for you. So, but the only thing here to keep in mind is that it's still going to be noisy, it's still going to be messy. The elevators are typically boxed up when it's brand new. So you might have to go through a period of time where it's going to be a little bit of like a mess with the building, but it's part of the deal. And here we come to the closing costs. Closing costs with pre-construction are typically higher than with existing resale properties, and mainly it's because of the fact that everything you're basically hooking everything up from the start, and there's of course levies from the city. So the closing costs are additional expenses that you need to pay for between the time you make an offer and the day that you close. So it includes legal fees, land transfer tax, CMHC insurance, which you don't need in this case because you've got 20%. PACO, I think this is I was mentioning here the resale property. So it is suggested that the buyers will prepare or budget for 5 to 8% additionally for closing costs in pre-construction. Okay, that is not a small amount, you guys. So keep that in mind. If you're planning to close on your property, 5 to 8% extra for closing. Now, here's what the closing costs may look like. Development and educational levies. Levies are taxes that the city, oh, here you go. Got another person joining here. I'm going to let them in. So the levies are taxes that the city imposes onto the developer, and the developer passes that on to all the buyers, to the owners. And what these are is this. So if you're putting a massive structure and there's 400 units that are coming up to the area, you're intensifying a neighborhood. The city needs to look at it from a perspective. Do I need more parking now in the area? Do I need new parks to take care of this new demo or this new population that's coming in? Do I need a new school? Do I need new recreation and things like that? So the city has to account for that. And so in order to build this infrastructure around the building, they're going to basically charge the developer, which you're going to have to be the one to pay. Now, the developers will cap these levies, cap them off. So, and here's the caps that are typical. Again, for 1-bedroom units, they typically will stop somewhere around 7 to 10K. For 2 bedrooms, 12 to 20. For 3 bedrooms, 15 to 25. So this means that if the city imposes more of a tax, the developer will eat that cost. But obviously, if it's less, then you're paying less as well. New home warranty plan enrollment fee, about $1,500. Utility hookup fees, between $500 and $1,500. Assignment fees, this is if you're selling before final closing or you flip the unit. That typically could be $5,000 unless you're getting it with an incentive without this fee. Lawyer fees are anywhere between $2,000 and $2,500. And of course, land transfer tax, hard to estimate based on you, because you have to estimate on the purchase price. But you can see that in one of my previous webinars. Okay, so in all of this adds up to a little bit of a higher amount. Okay, and if you're buying, let's say, somewhere on a higher floor, and you have this last deposit of 5% at occupancy, and then you need to close in the next 6 months, well, you need to come up with that amount of money in that short period of time there. So you want to be ready for that. Okay. Quickly, let's run through common myths. Pre-construction is cheaper than resale. We talked about it. Pre-construction has consistently been priced at 15 to 30% premium. You get a better deal if you buy directly from the developer. Almost all builders hire a marketing company to promote pre-construction sales. Okay, so you actually, by the time the developer will release it to the public where you can buy directly from the developer, the prices have already gone up quite a bit. So you may or may not get a better deal. like Ara is saying, there are certain instances where you could, but you probably wouldn't know how to negotiate with them anyways without the help of a realtor. Surprise closing costs. A big concern for buyers is the fact that there's hidden and surprising costs at the time of closing. But that's not the case. The reality is that you'll be aware of all the closing costs well ahead of time. And if you're working with a good lawyer, they will be able to even give you estimates of certain things that we can't really predict. So things like levies and things like that, they will have a pretty good idea of what that's going to look like. And they will give you a breakdown of that way at the time that you're going through your cooling off period. So like years and years and years before you actually need to close. Another common myth is that developers don't care, but the truth is the developers do care about their buyers. If they want to keep their successful reputation, they need to provide their buyers with great customer service and good quality finishes and things like that. Top tier, top rated builders will always be there to answer questions and walk you through everything. So, and I can tell this difference as well myself. When I call for my clients, certain builders are very different in their responsiveness over others. And that speaks to their tier as well. Okay. Quick note about assignments, because a lot of people are buying properties in order to flip them and assign them before occupancy. If you are purchasing a property with the intention to flip in a few years when the project is complete, you have to let your realtor and your lawyer know. You need an assignment clause included in the contract if you're doing that. And even if you have an assignment clause, you can only assign your purchase agreement under strict criteria typically. The builder does not want to compete with you. Sorry, I wrote complete. They don't want to compete with you. So they will restrict when you can sell your contract. And usually they need to already be sold at 90% of their own units. Okay. The builder will also charge you to request the assignment, and they can arbitrarily say no. So it's really good to have this contingency here. If you think that you may have there's an opportunity that you're going to be assigning, you want to include provisions about that in your agreement if they're not already included, and see if there are certain incentives that you can get. Okay, so keep that in mind. Another thing too, I wanted to note with assignments, there is a specific timing with assignments that you can assign. And if you mess up the timing, again, you need to talk to your lawyer, and it has to do with the occupancy. There's an HST tax of $24,000 that you could be on the hook for if you don't get the timing right. Or your buyer can be on the hook for that HST, which again is going to be detracting them from the purchase if you don't do it right. So definitely always speak to the lawyer. Okay, and here are some of the developers that I put in here that are very, very reputable. Again, reputable developers typically will finish on time, and they're unlikely to cancel projects. Okay, so Tridel is like the first one on everybody's list, I feel like. Daniel Scorp, I absolutely love their buildings and what they're doing in Regent Park. Menke's another phenomenal developer. Great Golf, Crestford. So I can share this with you guys later if you want. I can share this entire slide, so you can always refer back to this and see who the good developers are. Okay, do we have any questions or answers, or maybe Ara and Ryan want to add anything that I've missed? I'm going to stop the share now. Do I even have Ara in here? Oh, Ara got kicked off of the thing. So, all right, without Ara on here, does anybody have any questions? Was this helpful? I was wondering why Ara wasn't messaging.
Hi, Mila. This is Chitrali.
Hi, Chitrali.
Hi, I just joined a little bit late. I don't know my question makes sense at all or not, but still I'm going to ask it. In case of pre-construction, the price they offer, like a building gonna complete in 3 years of time. So the price they are seeing right now, is that a projected price or is that a current market price?
It's not a current market price. They always add a premium on the price. So you're always going to be buying slightly higher than what the market price dictates for a similar product. And it depends on the municipality you're buying in and how busy it is in there. in Toronto right now, developers are putting premiums of like 15 to 30%. If you're going outside, I've seen it's not as intense, but still, like I was looking at a project today somewhere in the GTA, like it wasn't close, where you'd expect to get like under $1,000 per square foot because everything around it is under $1,000 square foot, and they're selling for like $1,200 per foot. Oh, and I think it's like in like the North Etobicoke, where condos are significantly cheaper, but so there is that premium there for sure.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Yes.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit more about this offline if you want to. We can discuss what you're looking for and just like see if you're looking at houses or condos and kind of play it by ear. But and the reason I wanted to do this, you guys, is because, like I said, I think there's a lot of confusion around pre-construction, and it may be the best route for you, but it may not be. And it really depends. Like if you're a first-time buyer, you might be in a better position to buy something that's already existing. But first-time buyers don't realize that they can afford to get into resale. Dhruti, go ahead.
Hey Mila, this is Dhruti's husband, Jayesh, by the way.
Hi, how are you guys? Nice to hear from you.
Hear from you too, Mila. Thank you so much for covering this session. Question on getting a mortgage for pre-construction. What are or may not be the differences in getting a mortgage for a pre-construction condo versus resale?
So the biggest difference is that you don't need a mortgage upfront. What you do need is a letter when you are signing for your contract. You'd need a letter from a lender saying that you are pre-approved, but those letters they don't guarantee that you're going to get a mortgage anyways, and there are ways to figure that out. But basically, once you get to the time when the closing is happening, there's really no difference. It's just that it's not going to be a high ratio mortgage, which means that you've put down already 20%. So you're only financing 80% of the actual property's value. And by then, the property should typically increase in value. So in the bank's eyes, it's a really good investment, because already you would have bought it at a cheaper price than market value typically. So they don't have a hard time giving that mortgage out as long as you qualify financially, obviously. So your income, and the typical things with your income is they take your household income, remove all your debts, and then multiply what is left by 5.5 in a nutshell. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem. By the way, with the debts, you guys, just again, to reiterate from my other webinar, if you have any financing or like any payments, such as student loan, line of credit, or car loans or things like that, that you're paying $400 a month, that equals to about $100K of your mortgage. So if your car payment is $400 a month, $100,000 will be slashed out of your pre-approval. If you're paying $800 a month for a car, then $200,000 gets slashed out of your pre-approval. So that's something to keep in mind. You want to remove all your debts when you are applying for a mortgage. Andrew is asking if these developers can go bankrupt. 100%. People can go bankrupt. There was a notorious developer in Toronto called Urban Corp, who he was over leveraging himself for a long, long time. If you guys want to read the story, it's a very long article, but it's an interesting one to know. He was building a lot. There's a lot of buildings in Toronto that are Urban Corp buildings, and he ended up over leveraging very, very much so. He was borrowing from other countries. I think he was borrowing from like Israel at some point, because they didn't know about their problems, because nobody else was giving them money at this point here. And then finally they had to go bankrupt. But it doesn't affect, obviously, the previous properties that they built. It does affect the ones who are in the process of either being constructed or before they put the shovel in the ground. So unfortunately, that was a very sad story. A lot of the people put deposits for that project, and then they waited years and years and years before he put a shovel in the ground. And then finally he went bankrupt. And the Tyrion Warranty that you have to have with a pre-construction project, that's a mandatory warranty that protects you. It only covers $20,000 of your deposit. So if you've put in $80,000 of deposit, you'll get back 20. And so these people were now like 7 years into down the road in the market has exploded. You know how Toronto is, and now they didn't get their deposits back, or a very small amount of that back, and they were completely priced out. So that was a very sad story. But again, that's like, it happens, but it happens very rarely. And that is the importance of going for understanding who is the developer that you're working with, seeking reviews and asking people about the developers. Okay, asking your realtor and stuff, which is why we have our top 10 list that I've compiled for you guys in there. There are others also that are still very, very reputable. So yes, I hope that answers your question, Andrew. I went into like a tangent. The most commonly what happens is developers cancel projects. Okay. And again, that doesn't happen very often, but it does sometimes for whatever reasons, and they can cancel the project. And then of course there are procedures that happen there, but because they're not bankrupt at that point, when they cancel project, you get your entire deposit back. It's just sad because especially if you're a first-time buyer, you are, again, like, time is your enemy when you don't have property. When you have property, time is your ally, because you're building wealth as you're just living in this property that's appreciating, right? But as somebody that doesn't own, time is what can really make it harder and harder and harder for you to get in, just from seeing what we've been seeing with the market. And just a fun fact, interesting story. My colleague today posted an interesting post on Instagram, Matthew. There is a prosperity group or something in Ottawa, and they pull data together and they did projections. So these projections are based on policy, the government policies, and certain other things that they do. I don't know how they do it, but they basically looked into what's the population growth that's going to happen in Ontario. What's the turnover of like parents basically passing away and their estates starting to belong to their children. And the numbers were still staggering, that we need to basically, again, not to lie to you guys about specific numbers. I can send you the article if you want, but it basically says that there's a very large number of units that we would need to build. And with the projections of how much we're going to be building still, we are way, way, way behind. We just simply don't have enough capacity for the people, plus the immigration and all of the other things. So we are basically continuously, like every day that passes, every year that passes, we're more and more behind on the number of dwellings that we have that we need to provide to people. So that alone will tell you that the prices will continue to go up. So if anybody wants that article, I think I still have it open. Yeah. Anybody else has any questions? Or should we call it a day? Is Ryan here? Ryan and Morgan, are you guys just online in the meeting and not listening to me? Because I will know. All right, I think, well, Morgan is here. Hey, girl. Thanks. I think we're going to start calling it a night, I guess, unless somebody else has any other questions. Oh, Morgan's putting baby to bed. There you go. Cute. Yeah. Was this helpful, you guys? Did this answer your questions, or was this like, did you learn new information today? I'd love to know feedback so I can adjust these and make them more interesting for you.
Yes, definitely. This was super helpful. And so many of the myths that you presented were definitely something that we had in mind. So those slides, we always love the myth slides that you present. So yeah, that was definitely very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, and I'm happy that was helpful. And again, if you guys want these slides, I can send them to you. But I will send out an email to everybody probably tomorrow with the link to the replay of this. So Chitrali, even though you came a little bit late, you can rewatch. And for everybody else, like if you guys want any resources, we can talk a little bit more. Because even though like I tried to keep it shorter today, but you know, there's still a ton of stuff to talk about with these things. Okay, so I think we're going to start wrapping it up. Thanks everybody for joining. I really appreciate everybody coming in. Oh, is this my mom?
Mila.
Oh, that's my niece. Привет.
Привет.
How are you?
Good.
My niece was saying hello. Too cute. Okay, guys. Bye, everybody. I'm shutting it down for the night. I'll see you later. Thanks for joining. I appreciate you coming, and we will talk in a month. Bye. Кристина. Кристина, привет. И пока.